very soon now, they will be catapulting off the deck of the Yorktown by means of the hydraulic catapult, and will be on their way to Pearl Harbor. We understand that within 3 minutes, the plane carrying the 3 astronauts, Ben James, Dr. Clarence Jernigan, and Dr. Charles LaPinta, and 2 NASA photographers will be on its way to Pearl Harbor, to be followed immediately afterward by another Navy plane containing other NASA representatives. The plane is on the forward part of the flight deck, forward of the island superstructure. The communication ship Arlington has drawn off slightly, is now about a half mile off the starboard side of the carrier. The number 1 card flight is lined up on the catapult, and very soon now it will be launched directly forward off the flight deck and heading northeast for Pearl and Hickam.
The Yorktown still has one more job on this space mission after the astronauts and the space officials leave, and that is to return to Pearl Harbor tomorrow morning with the space capsule and unload it to an airplane which will fly it back to the factory in California where it was made for further inspection.
Very detailed work has already been done on that spacecraft in the hangar deck of the Yorktown. Some of the technicians have been spending many hours on it ever since it was brought on board yesterday morning, disassembling various parts of it and removing critical equipment, sorting, packing them very carefully for the long trip back home, and also taking swabs of various portions of the interior of the spacecraft, looking for possible biological material of interest to the NASA doctors.
The 2-engine airplane is warming up. It's hooked into the catapult, and when the engines show the proper readings and all is clear, they will be launched by a steam catapult off the forward end of the deck of the Yorktown, and the astronauts will be on their way back to Hawaii. The engines being raced now to make sure they're all right. This flight to Hawaii takes about 2.5 hours, and there will be the first of many welcoming ceremonies in Honolulu when they arrive. It takes a fair amount of time to check out everything that has to be done before a plane is launched from the deck of a carrier. It's a difficult operation. I've seen it several times and still don't believe it.
Yes, and a lot of people have to be very closely involved in the operation, including primary flight, the bridge of the carrier, all the flight deck crew, flight operations, the weatherman, of course, and all of the men, for example, the catapult men who will be standing alongside the flight deck, stand on a little platform just below the level of the flight deck so that their head and shoulders are above it, and they're in contact with the flight director who stands on the deck, and he's the man who will turn up. Finally, in a very dramatic gesture, he points forward and down toward the deck, and almost in a matter of seconds afterward, off goes the plane. You know, a little last-minute work being done around it.
I think they're taking the chocks out from under the wheels now. You can't hear anything on the flight deck of a carrier when planes are warming up, and so the flight deck crews have a very elaborate system of hand signals and at night flashlight signals, which they use in this, what really looks like a ballet of colorful costumes on the deck.
Well, those colored lights at night, it looks especially like almost like a theatrical performance back home.
One of the officers now giving the signal for the plane to be put in its final position and the catapult hooked on.
Off to one side is an E-1B known as a Willie Flood. That's one of the planes that was used yesterday as an air boss. There were 2 of them. That's a plane that has a large radome on top of it. Looks like a sort of a flattened egg. And that radome contains a large radar set, which is extremely powerful. But that's not being used in today's launching.
This countdown seems almost as long as the one at Cape Kennedy.
Doesn't it, though? Well, now it seems to be all set.
Everybody running.
The catapult.
A man just to the left of the airplane will give the signal. Everything is clear for launch.
Flight director pointing, and the plane should be departing instantly. And there it goes. There it goes. Yorktown heading north. The Cronkite sky. And Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders. A greeting by Governor Burns of Hawaii, Senators Pong and Inouye, the Mayor of Honolulu, Mayor Blaisdell, high-ranking admirals and generals. Official reception. Congratulations from all concerned. Undoubtedly brief remarks by the astronauts, and then a quick transfer to another plane, a 141, and from Honolulu, a non-stop flight to Houston, and a reunion with families and friends. The astronauts, the men who have performed the triumphant and historic Apollo 8, have left the prime recovery carrier, the Yorktown, and the Yorktown's part in Apollo 8 is just about over.
The astronauts' part in the flight actually is not over, because there are all the ceremonial parts that they'll have to go through. Their cod plane now gaining altitude, heading for Hawaii for the first ceremony, and there'll be many others. But once back in Houston, they will go through debriefing, which means that they will sit for many long hours and talk into a tape recorder and answer questions and virtually relive moment by moment their flight. And these records will be studied, and from them, the space officials will try to learn what they can to improve future space flights.
And, of course, all the enormous mass of detailed information and data accumulated in the course of this flight on the ground will also have to be analyzed, examined, and inspected. That will take weeks and probably months, and all of this information will be embodied in the upcoming flights, the Apollo 9, Apollo 9, 10, and 11, and perhaps by the end of 1969, the epic moment when man will set foot on the moon. Well, now we're going back to last night to what happened in the cake-cutting ceremony on the hangar deck.
And that has the name of the recovery force, the Apollo 8 recovery force, the name of the units involved, the Underwater Demolition Team 12, Helicopter Squadron 4, the ship itself, the Yorktown, and the air wing, the flew the air boss planes. Looks like Borman, the command pilot, will do the cutting.
Seems almost a shame to ruin a cake like that.
There he goes. Trying to get a...
The whole cake weighs 550 pounds, I believe. Or it does now. About half an hour from now, it probably will weigh considerably less.
There's a deep cut. Colonel Borman makes a deep cut in the cake and hands the sword now to Captain Lovell, who he jokingly suggests cutting it sideways. Now he makes his cut in the cake. The icing is white, but the decorations are blue and gold, the colors of the Navy. And finally, the junior member of the Apollo team, Major Anders, makes his cut. They're cutting little pieces out of the edge. I suppose when they've made the ceremonial cuts, the stewards will come along and cut it up for eating.
Yes, and they usually pass out punch or some other sort of liquid to go along with the cake.
The cake is cut, and the sword is now being returned. And let's see who's going to get the first piece. Lots of joking and smiling.
Ron, you probably noticed that Captain Lovell referred to Lieutenant Colonel Anders. That's a reference to the fact that by law, astronauts making their first journey in space are advanced one grade if they're below the grade of colonel in the Army or Air Force or captain in the Navy. Anders has been a major in the Air Force, so he is now Lieutenant Colonel William Anders.
At the officers' dinner in the wardroom, which the astronauts attended just before this cake-cutting ceremony on the hangar deck, there was a great deal of good-natured kidding about the fact that Captain Lovell was the only Navy man with 2 Air Force officers in the Apollo 8. Bill Anders did go to the Naval Academy, but chose to go into the Air Force. Lovell said he kept assuring his capsule mates that they didn't have anything to worry about, that the Navy would be down in the water ready to pick them up. And Anders said he wasn't really worried about the Navy being there. He was worried about hitting the right ocean, since Lovell was the navigator.
A little piece of cake slipped to the deck there. We don't believe for a minute that Colonel Borman is going to hand out individual pieces of cake to all the members of the crew who are assembled here on the hangar deck. However, he'll probably do it to some of the first who have lined up. This is one of the final events of their stay aboard the Yorktown. Tomorrow morning they have another episode in their physical examination. Then they have brunch with the chief petty officers in the CPO mess. They'll stand on the starboard side while the communication ship Arlington comes alongside, and they'll wave to the Arlington.